act of writing, like, yeah, I want to sell books, but also I'm doing it for myself, and I'm writing an adventure because I want to go on an adventure, and if I know
Right.
the end point ahead of time, it's not really that adventure.
Welcome back to the Men's Adventure Fiction Podcast. An exciting night. I never know how to do the transition before we tell you what's happening, but I will say I'm excited for this conversation because the coolest part of the internet, I think, is connecting with people who have this niche interest. And the conversations I've had on this podcast, Discord, and just in the community, things like podcast. It's so nice. So I feel like tonight we're going to have the pleasure of that. So I'll let Nathaniel tell you a little bit more, but I'm excited myself, guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night. Today, we are honored to be with Logan D, must stand for danger, Whitney, on with us today, the author of Honor Among Rogues, the editor of Cliffhanger Magazine, and of Rogues in the House podcast fame, right?
That's correct. Yes, yes. Yeah.
Well, cool. I'll pass it over to you because you know more about
Awesome.
you than I do. So tell everybody.
Man. Yeah, what a loaded topic already. I know more about myself. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm Logan Whitney. LD is just, author stuff. But I was the host of Rogues in the House podcast for many years, which is a sword and sorcery dedicated podcast, which isn't like my most favorite passionate niche, but I do, like, I read it. I love Robert E. Howard. I like Conan. I've read adjacent things. And so, like, I had input, and through that, like, I learned podcasting. I ended up editing an anthology of books that we put out as a podcast, stuff like that. My real passion has always been, I guess, here we call it men's adventure, but that, like, pulp adventure style stuff. So, yeah, that's, where I come from, fiction-wise.
That's super cool. And that, I'm curious, like, what was your breaking into it? Like, how did you get into the genre itself?
Yeah, so I guess in a couple different routes, actually. When I was relatively young, I want to say like 12, I lived in a small town in Nebraska, and in the nearest big city, a Barnes & Noble opened. My mom took me there when it opened, and I found Clive Cussler, and I know you posted a picture of the Clive Cussler book the other day on Instagram. He had two young adult versions of books, Inca Gold and Shockwave. I bought both that day, and I read them both in a week. And I was in love with Clive Cussler. So there's like the adventure portion of it.
Right.
And like I devoured all his books all the way through high school. But also kind of like I was an early reader. My mom really took the time to like sit down and teach me to read before kindergarten and stuff. So reading has always been a part of my life. But I came into short stories, especially pulp short stories, through H.P. Lovecraft, which is horror. Yeah, and then from there, I found Robert E. Howard because they were friends, like pen pals, and their fiction crossed. So I met Conan, and then from there, I branched out into like El Borak, which is actually I prefer El Borak to Conan because of the historical grounding. And then I branched out into pulp magazines and like. My parents used to go to like antique stores. That might have been a thing for like a lot of people in my little sphere in Nebraska. We like to peruse antique stores. So like I had vintage magazines, which I unfortunately don't have anymore. Like college came around, I moved out, and I just don't. I got rid of them, and I regret it every day. But so like just the path of enjoying reading led me to these things. It's really all it is.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. I for sure resonate with that of like at an 11, 12-year-old age kind of finding the niche, right? Like you start with so many different things, whether it's the Hardy Boys or the great illustrated classics. And you're like, oh, this is exciting. There's actually like stories within these pages that are engaging to my young mind. Like I gotta
absolutely.
Get more. And then when you find, for me, it was for sure Louis L'Amour was my touch point. I think I have,
Right.
I've talked about it countless times on the podcast, but you guys can hear it again. I had an uncle. It was my dad's best man's father, and we called him Uncle Pete, but he was like much older than an uncle would be, and he lived in Maine. And we were like just going through his kind of back room, and it was all dusty. And he grabs a Louis L'Amour book. He's like, "You ever hear of Louis L'Amour?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Here, read that. You'll thank me later."
Yeah.
And sure enough, here I am dedicating a podcast to him, essentially.
Yeah.
So Louis L'Amour for sure started it off, but it's cool to hear kind of the way that it works itself out, and how like the stair step, the stone
Right.
through the river, almost of you getting to where you are.
And L'Amour is such a great example, and I think I mentioned it in my introduction to Gold Canyon Ghost, but like I'm named after a Louis L'Amour character because my dad is such a big fan.
That's
Logan Sackett, Ride the Dark Trail.
So
if I
good.
was a girl, it was going to be Drusilla, which is Tyrell Sackett's wife, and I'm glad I came out a boy because Drusilla is not
Is that
not
what the
in. Yeah.
is that what the D's for?
Yeah, no, but it should be, right? Yeah, just keep it all there. Yeah,
Dude, that's so cool. The actually named after a Louis L'Amour character. I might.
Yeah.
That's legendary.
I call my daughter Louis all the time, and I remember
Oh, that's
Luke
cute.
texted me one time. He was like, "Bro, is she named after L'Amour?" I was like, "No, I maybe like unintentionally."
mate. Yeah,
Yeah,
Too cool.
That's so good. And like, okay, so kind of a follow up on that is, where do you keep up with these now? Like for me, half price books, I tell Nathaniel I'm there all the time, like just like looking at the old paperbacks, because that's
Sure.
how I found Louis L'Amour way later than you guys, and that's where I found him, was like half price book kind of deal. And
yeah.
that's where I feel like you can touch a lot of those old paperback.
Absolutely. So you guys are lucky. I have some friends that live out east with you guys. You guys have those half price books.
Yeah.
Used bookstores are not as popular in New Mexico. And
Thanks, man.
yeah, like things like local bookstores. And I mean, this is an unfortunate reality, and I think you guys have touched on this in like previous podcasts, that like reading is not the preferred entertainment method, right? And I think New Mexico is real low in like literacy, and so you can really tell when you visit a used bookstore. There is one particular called Don's Paperback Book Exchange and like Don passed away
Promising,
fairly recently,
Oh,
but he would love everything you guys talk about. I didn't know him personally, but like you can see the decorations. He's got like a big Conan the Barbarian painted on the back wall. He's got
so
Louis
cool.
L'Amour books like wall to wall, Doc Savage, things like that. So that's where I go, and like the it's kind of limited, right, to those authors that have the standalone character collections.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
you know, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, great point. And yeah, I didn't take that into consideration, that some people, like I'll say that name to sometimes to people half price books, and they'll have no idea that I'm like talking
Yeah,
about a real
right.
place and stuff. And yeah, I mean that's definitely helped a lot. It hasn't helped a lot with the pulp magazines. I don't know where,
Sure.
other than Pulp Fest, I don't know where people come across those. I mean, I guess online,
Yeah.
like eBay, but I always
Right,
like
right.
finding it in like person. I don't know if anybody else
Yeah.
agrees, but there's something about like the process of going and finding it. It feels more, I don't know. It feels more right
Yeah,
than
it's
just
like
ordering
finding a
it in.
treasure, right? It's an
Yeah,
adventure in
you're treasure
itself.
hunting
Yeah.
modern life. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
For sure. If you were like, oh, I need to find a book, like if you were looking for Double in Trouble to buy, you wouldn't be going to
Yeah.
peruse Barnes and Noble or used bookstore.
Right,
Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
definitely going to luck upon this. You would have to buy it online. But I agree that it's like, I don't want to just go. I mean, if I'm really in need, I'll buy a lot of like all the Chester Drum books or a bunch of Western paperbacks, but usually
Sure.
it's like, no, they gotta come organically. I gotta find them. Otherwise, what's the point,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And when finding them out in the wild, it's all about the cover, like that's how you discover
Oh,
these.
yes.
That's why you got the best cover of 2026 so far. I love this. Your
No,
cover
thank
is
you. Thank you.
incredible. So it definitely would
the
pique my interest
artist-
at half price.
Yeah, he does such a good, especially horses.
Yeah.
He's actually doing the cover for my next release as well. So I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm sure it'll also follow the similar aesthetic there. So
That is fantastic, dude.
Yeah, dude, it is. I remember on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, I think at this time when this first came out, just talking about the horse is truly magnificent, dude. The rippling muscles of the horse is just so sick.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But the cover truly
I'll
is
pass that
spectacular.
on. Yeah.
That can kind of get into a brief discussion. Well, I think we'll get into the meat of the discussion in a little while, but while we're here, let's talk about that. Where did your
Sure.
did you how did you come up with this? Did you tell them what you had like sort of in mind, or was it a specific thing? Or you say, here's some inspiration, go for it. How did that all work?
Yeah, so I've worked with artists a number of times, like when I did the Book of Blades anthology and stuff like that. And like I'm not this level of art, but like I have some experience in art. Like I've done oil paintings, I've been in
Oh,
shows and
very
stuff like
cool.
that. I'm
Very
not
cool.
nearly as good as this. And like what I like to do is kind of just give the artist some vibes. Like
Nice.
I'm very picky about who I ask. Like I want someone who gets it, right? And like I've met this like not met in person, but like chatted with this person through like online communities. Like I knew they got it. I knew
Right.
they liked this kind of thing, and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. In this instance, Hardeep asked for the story the title was from, so he actually read the story, and then that's where he got his vibes. Now,
Yeah.
you'll probably notice that having read the story, it doesn't actually like it doesn't reflect a specific scene, but it's trying to evoke like the desert adventure type thing.
Right.
So just
Right.
let him run with the vision, and I think that's the best results.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. And selling that, like you said, selling the aesthetic, selling that feeling that you're going for in the stories is more important often than like
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
get a specific scene or anything like that. It's all about when you're walking by and being like, okay, that connects to the itch I need scratched right now, and then you pick it up. And like,
right.
yeah, this is exactly
Yeah,
what I needed. It's perfect.
yeah,
Yeah, I think too for sure. Even if you had, because that the scene from the book cover of Treasure is My Trade is a scene from the book, but I don't think anybody's reading the book and being like, oh, there's the cover scene. Like nobody's like, oh, I got to leaf through and find where the cover picture comes from. So
yeah.
for sure, I agree that it's the vibe, it's the aesthetic, it's the feeling that it evokes for sure above all else.
And like I have a love hate relationship with contemporary like thriller novels, the like adventure equivalent novels today, because they're like sleek, minimalist, abstract, right?
Hmm.
But I think one of my favorite covers is Night Over the Solomons collection. It's just like
Yeah,
a
dude.
paperback. I don't have it on me, but it's like an explosion, the guy and the girl
The
running away from
running.
the explosion, the junk.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I do miss those kind of books because like whether you know it turns out to be a stinker or not, the cover alone I think is worth the price of admission. The artists of
Yeah.
that era um, just had a certain way of expressing the action inside the book.
Absolutely. I've definitely bought a stack of books at Pulp Fest just for they were all the same artist, and I was like, these covers, even if I don't like
Yeah,
these books, like you said, like the covers are what we're getting at this point.
they
This is
just look
fantastic.
cool on a shelf, and that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, Nathaniel and I were just talking to an artist in the space and the genre and stuff, and we were talking about how that is its own part of this, and the allure of it
Yeah,
is I love the stories as much as I do love the art. And Pinterest for me, like these days, I'll look up pulp art, and I just love looking at it and using it in Instagrams to like evoke same thing, like evoke those feelings. Because when I'm sitting there behind a desk bored, it's the perfect way to tap quickly, and like the artists capture that. It's so nice.
Yeah.
yeah.
I could.
I there's absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Do you have favorite covers and certain
Gosh.
artists that you like?
So, I mean, having come from a background in sword and sorcery, like Frank Frazetta is like a in a tier of his own, right?
Right.
I don't know if anyone's ever conveyed. In his case, it's mostly fantasy art, but the action, the visceral feeling of that is like bar none. I'll admit that I have a hard time finding the actual names of artists. I know that
Same.
information is out
Yeah.
there. And I know like some of those have like fallen into public domain, but I really like the covers of Adventure magazine. Um, way back in the day. Argosy has some, and Blue Book also has some really astounding. I am presuming they're watercolor paintings that they use for them, and like a lot of those, there's scans and stuff online now on
Right.
like Internet Archive or whatever that you can see those. So, like I said, artists are kind of hard to come by. A lot of those old magazines don't credit them in an obvious way, and if they do, I've missed it. But perusing the
Yeah.
covers of those old pulp magazines, I just do it for inspiration. So
Right. I'm with you, and I'm so bad with the names too. I'm
yeah,
so if I'm looking at the Louis L'Amour's, even if I at one point knew, it's gone. It's that information is long gone. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I wish I did. I mean, they did such a great job, but I just can't do it. But
yeah.
as a reader, are you more short story reader as you are, with this being a short story collection, or are you
Yeah.
more of a novel writer or
Gosh.
reader, like kind of where you land there?
So I used to read novels pretty regularly. I'm a big fan of the airport novel, Cussler, Rollins, Dan
Yeah.
Brown, even. But I find as an adult, when my time is more limited because we got work, we got family, we got stuff to do, that a short story can be read in a reasonable amount of time, maybe a couple sessions, and I can have a satisfying hit of good fiction.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that a lot recently. Now I do still have the itch to read a novel, but I do find like if I pick up a novel and it's like 400 pages and then I don't get to read it for a couple days, then I'm lost, and I don't have
Yeah.
that same feeling with the short story. So, but I have always loved short stories. Um, because they deliver a I guess I'm gonna equate this to like a shot of hard liquor. Like you can hit a
Yeah.
good punch, right, in a short amount of time, and I appreciate that. I think you guys spoke to Jeff Pentabona, is that right?
Yeah.
About this, which was such a great episode, and I'm not just saying that because he mentioned my book, but it was such a great episode, and he mentioned that those old magazines, they'd be like full length novel, but it's really like, maybe capping out at 30,000, 40,000 words, which we consider novellas. And I think between a solid 7,000 word short story and a 40, 50,000 novella, that's like the sweet spot for adventure before
Yeah.
you get to, I don't mind the in-depth character analysis and character studies. But like I want to feel like I'm experiencing new things, like I'm on an
Yeah.
adventure. And I
Right.
think that's the sweet spot for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well
couldn't
said.
agree more.
I it's the shorter guys that always have like locked me in more, and they don't have that dragging feeling to them. Like the Louis L'Amour length, I think that's one of the things that drew me in. Is so many of his are just like that perfect size, and that's how I've always written too. Is like I only have that much story. I don't
Right.
want to expand it. If I do, I feel like it's gonna be boring and pointless. So I'm just gonna give you the the stuff that I wanted to give you.
So this. I have a question for you, gentlemen. When you write, do
Yeah.
you map out, like, do you outline your story and go, or do you just wing it, start to finish? What's your process here?
Nathaniel, did you hear that? Because I'll give you a chance to answer.
Yeah.
And then I can jump in after.
For me, it's for sure a case by case basis. I prefer to wing it and kind of come with it off the cuff, because I feel like that's where I write to figure out what's going on, and I write to be engaged by that. So when I have to map it out and plan it, that is done. I know what's going on now, and so I'm really no longer interested in actually writing out the prose of it. So usually what'll end up happening is, depending on how much longer it gets, that's when I start to have to realize, like, oh, I might have written myself into a corner. I need to stop and think and figure out how to get this to an endpoint. But it really changes story to story. Something that I really appreciate about Luke has been his kind of whole concept of like, yeah, I don't care what the word count is. I'm telling the story at the length that it deserves to be told. And I think
Yeah.
that that's such an
Yeah.
important thing to learn as an author. So for sure, it's like, okay,
Absolutely.
I'll outline or map if I need to, but I want to do this as much as I can, just free form, figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, dude. I'm very much in the same boat of case by case. I feel like every book needs to just be written how it's going to be written for you. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
if I get too dogmatic about my writing process, then I like end up screwing myself because I'm not
Yeah,
being
yeah.
flexible and stuff. So, but I also tend to prefer and opt towards just writing it, starting at the beginning and going through. I mean, the most crazy thing that my brain can't get across, like get behind, is people writing different scenes in different orders. I
Yeah, that's
Yes,
don't
crazy.
it
understand
blows
it.
my mind.
I don't
Um,
understand that.
Good
You
for
guys
them,
are
but
impressive,
yeah,
impressive. Yeah,
yeah,
because there are
yeah.
times I
Very
want
much the
to, but I
same.
can't.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll try and file that scene away to like when I get to it, right?
yeah.
Like it's like a goal to reach now. But I find for me the act of writing, like, yeah, I want to sell books, but also I'm doing it for myself, and I'm writing an adventure because I want to go on an adventure. And if I know
Right.
the end point ahead of time, it's not really that adventure. So that's kind of where
Well
I'm
said.
coming from. I just, yeah, I sounds like we're all very similar in that respect. That's interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder if that is like apropos to the genre. Like, is this because of the
Yeah,
genre we write, or it's funny.
yeah,
Like you said, all three of us align on that.
yeah. I mean, I know for sure this is true of Luke, but I wonder if this is the case for you as well, Logan. Of kind of like sometimes I'll just be struck with a set piece or a sequence that I know needs to be written, and I'll have no story for it, and I'll literally write a story to get to that set piece. You know, like, okay, I don't know
yeah,
what the beginning
yeah.
is, what the end's going to be. I have no idea what the motivation is. I just know there's this sick action scene, and I gotta write it,
Hmm.
but
Yep, yeah,
I gotta get
that's
there first.
absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
A lot
so
of the
good.
time for me, like I start out with a title, which I think a lot of people that I have talked to in like other communities, they find that weird. Like title comes after the story's done, but I'll come up with a title and like a vibe, and I think I mentioned this when I talked to Terrence, and then I'll just write from there. Like Curse of the Bone God was just like a title that popped in my head, and I knew I wanted to write something that was like noir adjacent, but also like tropical, and that
Hmm.
was the
Fantastic.
result, and that was just what it was.
That's so good. And again, tie that back to the art. That's what the artist was there for. Is like,
Yeah,
and when they really got it, they got it. And they did exactly that. Just transferred what we're going to be doing here for you, and you understand it right off the bat.
I for sure want to highlight as we're getting into this deeper discussion of like the short form story and how important it is and impactful it is. You really did, you bottled something up and did something incredible with this collection because it does not feel like it could possibly have been written in today's day and age. It for sure feels like it's been ripped from the
oh, thank
pages
you. Thank you so
of the
much.
actual pulps. And I think that that's what's been fun with Veritas is we see that all the time with a lot of the guys we publish, and we see it with you. It's like you take all the things that
Sure.
work with the old stuff, and then you're able to kind of capitalize on new things that we've learned in the last 100 years, and really make these stories just
Sure.
rush off the page. But with Bone God and with Mitch Faraday, that's his name, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Both of those guys
Yeah.
really feel like they're ripped from. I think I got it. It's my old dusty copy of the collected short stories of Louis L'Amour, Volume 4,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
Turk Madden, it has Ponga Jim, fantastic
Hmm.
stories. How much, like, it's just so rich. Like, it literally is like you know all about the indies. You know, like you were actually there.
That's thank you so much. Like that's such a high compliment. I try and be very humble. Like thank you so much. You have no
Of
idea how
course,
much
of
that means
course.
to me. Um my I guess I mean I mentioned this on Terrence too, with Terrence too, but I guess my whole thing is that like I read some like I was reading Turk Madden when I was like I can do that too. And
Yeah.
so that's what I try to do. I do try and so like I have a background in archaeology and history
Very cool.
from my like other careers, and so I try and bring in some like real research to try
Hmm.
and give it
Hmm.
like a more I guess deep cultural or geographical or whatever flavor, which you don't see all the time in like the older pulps. because like, you know, they're writing at a breakneck pace to meet a deadline and get something paid and whatever. And so that's kind of where that comes from. But the entire goal of Honor Among Rogues was to make something as close to vintage as I could in like aesthetic and package and format and prose and everything. So like that was what I set out to do, and I'm glad that that landed.
Yeah, that's got to be the best, like the ultimate goal for some of these is I want to be found in the thrift store and people
Yes,
not
yeah.
know that it was. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
dude.
Yeah, yeah.
recently found Jeff Pintabona's books at a half price book, and I was like, that's so good. Like it's so cool because it
Yeah,
was in the
that's
Louis
awesome.
L'Amour section, just right there. Like someone could come across that. It's very cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, I
Yeah,
think with yours, with that cover and the setup, it absolutely could trick me. Like, I would definitely think that's from a bygone era.
we for sure
Awesome.
made
Awesome.
the joke before of like, you just got to take a stack of these books, stuff from Terrence, stuff from Jeff, stuff from the Veritas team, stuff from
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
and rub a bunch of dirt on them and stick them in a box and put them on the Pulp Fest table, and they would sell better
Yeah.
than the the other ones
That's
would
so
because they're
cool.
like,
Yeah,
what is
that's
this
so
vintage
cool.
pulp stuff? um, yeah,
And
too
That's
a
awesome.
fantastic.
secret character you totally forgot about, but totally existed. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I love
So
it.
when you
So with, go
go
ahead,
go ahead,
Nathaniel, you got it.
I was gonna say
You got it.
with what is your perfect word count for writing then? Because I mean these seem like they all have somewhere around like 7 to 12,000 words, maybe. Just
Yeah,
spitballing.
actually. Yeah, so a couple of them were submitted to, well, actually no, just one was submitted to a request for or a submission call for for was it Rogue Blades Entertainment.
Oh, very cool.
Honor Among Rogues. It is my first accepted published story, and this was years
That's
ago.
awesome.
And I polished it a little bit because like my prose had matured since then.
Hmm.
But the call was for 6,500, I believe, which I think a lot of genre magazines use. I know like some go over, but the shorter ones are 6,500. But as I got into writing, I started to like realize, kind of like Luke said, 6,500 might not be enough words for the story. Like I know it's not a novel, so like Wet Devil and um, Hell Over the Hump capped out, I think, around 7,000 and like about 12,000 if I recall
Very
correctly.
cool. Very cool.
And I just let them go until they were done. So
Right.
that was a new experience for me. Actually, I had initially planned on having it about 150 pages because Night Over the Solomons is just over 150 pages, and that's exactly what I wanted, right? And I
Hmm.
realized that that wasn't going to fit every story. So the last two, which actually I think kind of helps the flow of the collection itself, are a little more substantial. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think
Would
for me personally, I absolutely love reading novels, but I much prefer listening to audiobooks that are novels because if you listen to short stories that are novels, by the time it's kind of going, it's over, you know? But with a
Yeah.
novel,
Yeah.
like when you're reading it with your eyes and it's in your hands, it's like, oh man, it's so much less daunting to be like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about the 400-page problem you brought up of like, dude, if I
Right.
don't focus on this for the next 2 days, I'm cooked. So having these
Yeah.
be in such a digestible form and those word counts are perfect. I think for sure there's a lot of stuff that I write, and for a long time I wasn't sure I'd ever make it to a full length novel. Where you're right, dude. The adventure, the action adventure stuff really thrives in these short story things because it doesn't have enough time to overstay its welcome. So it's the same sort of
Yeah.
thing where like you're reading it and you're like, man, this is so engaging. And then right when you're like, well, I don't know how they're going to fit in 6 more sword fights or gun fights, it's over.
Right.
And you're like, oh, perfect. I didn't get disillusioned at all.
And like if you read like a modern thriller novel like a Cussler or a James Rollins, right, the page count of their book is like 400, 500 ish, but they have a cast of characters in these novels, and most of the time the entire setup is there's basically two novels in there and their
Yeah.
plots intertwine.
Yeah.
So you're getting
Great
two
point.
books to meet that word count, which requires juggling the characters and making them different enough to care about and having these two separate storylines that connect, which is a skill that I'll admit I do not have at this juncture, right? So like maybe one day, but that's that's cool, but that's not really what I would do. I like to focus on the tight paced single
Mm-hmm.
character, maybe two
Mm-hmm.
characters, I don't know, kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, dude, it took me a while to learn to add characters for sure. Like I used to write basically one character in real time, and I did that for the first basically three things I wrote
Sure.
because I was like, this is the easiest confinements where I can just like stay with this character and not intertwine plots or anything like that.
Hmm.
Because it's a totally different thing, and the modern thriller is like that's one of the biggest drawbacks for me is that I can't just be with that character. I'm always with
Right.
side
Yeah.
character this or like geopolitics over here, and I'm like, where's my cool guy though? I want my
Yeah. Yeah.
action hero. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like, gosh, you guys, you sound like you're just like parroting things from my head. So like, I don't feel like I don't have that much to add. There's something I think that's kind of beautiful about the simplicity of a single character narrative.
Yeah.
Whether it's first person like Nate Colt books or in third person, right? Being close on like almost an intimate level with someone, even if they're maybe a larger than life hero. It feels more like you're along for the ride instead of
Yeah.
hopping between almost like shots in a movie.
Hmm.
I'm interacting with the text as opposed to just watching it happen as like an outside
Yeah.
viewer. Does that make sense? I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense for sure. Because I think that's why I struggle with the first person. I've talked about this with Nathaniel. I've seen Nathaniel jump from high
Right.
heights that would make me want to throw up. So I understand the hero from that person much more. Like
Right.
I'm in like the psychology field and stuff, and so I've always just been
Sure.
more sit back and think. Where my dad was like an athlete, so I've always been more interested in that than lived that. So I've always written third person and see it as like movies. And
Yeah.
but for Nathaniel to like put you in it and like first person authors to put you in it, I do like that is a cool experience. I just feel like I flounder sometimes. I don't know if you think you're better at first or third,
Oh,
but for me, I think
that's
like I struggle with first.
that's just such an interesting conversation. I used to hate first person narratives. Um, Outside of the realm of horror, I felt like when I read an H.P. Lovecraft or one of those old pulp, they're usually in
Yeah,
first person. You get a lot of the dread of the atmosphere and whatever, and I thought that really worked. But I felt like when I read a first person, like a lot of Lula Moore, especially the Sackett series, right, is in first person,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt like sometimes it wasn't as exciting or tense because I knew if the character's speaking to me in first person that they
yeah,
lived, right? And there's
makes
lack
sense.
sense of
That's a
danger.
good point.
But I've recently changed my mind, mostly because of Treasure is My Trade. Actually,
Thank
this
you
is
so
real.
much.
Based.
Yeah. So on top of that, like H. Rider Haggard, Talbot Mundi, the really
Yeah.
like the older, almost Victorian era adventure, it was all first person, right? And they were framed in a way that like they were usually like documents or diaries or
Right. Right.
memoirs, right? And after reading Treasure is My Trade, I had this idea for a longer novel that I'm working on now. I'm just over halfway done. But I had this idea that it was going to be in third person, and then I read Treasures My Trade, and I was like, well, he did it, and it worked really well. And then all these influences here that I'm trying to like, operate under, they also did it in the first person. So I'm just going to dive in, and I have
Yeah,
to
Dude,
say, it might be the most fun I've ever had writing.
that's awesome.
So the big change for Logan here. Yeah.
well, that's super. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for very flattering
Yeah.
remarks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
super cool to see that, and I think I agree on your kind of trajectory there of man, when you have a bad first person narrative, it's got to be one of the worst things you ever read. And
Yeah, yeah.
it really like it's hard to enjoy. And so I think it wasn't until I found some of the more hard boiled guys that I kind of was like, oh, this is
Right,
funny. Like I
right.
remember reading the Big Book of Crime Fiction by Otto Penzler, and it had Dashiell or Raymond Chandler's Red Wind, and there's the scene where
Yeah.
he's sitting there in a room with the girl, and she's like, don't you move," and he's like, "We were both sitting down, and neither of us was going anywhere." And I was like, well, this can be funny. Like this is, and it's because it's his
Yeah, yeah.
personality taking over. And so that kind of like really intrigued me. And to the point of Luke seeing things from third person as like a movie, when you're reading a good first person, I feel like you have the opportunity. It's like you're sitting with a really cool dude at the bar and he's telling you a story. And the whole
Sure.
time you're part of you's like, there's just no way this can be true. But he's got so much
Yeah,
conviction that
yeah.
you're like, dude, maybe this is true. This is crazy. So when handled well, I think it's really solid. But I remember for sure for me, the first time I read the opening to Wings Over Brazil, and it goes into this third person
Hmm.
narrative of Ponga Jim Mayo, and he like thrusts his salt hardened hands into his immaculate white dinner jacket, and I was like, dude, now
Yeah,
that's how you introduce a character. Like, and you can't do that. You can't write that as a first person. Like I thrust my salt hardened hands into my immaculate
Right,
white dinner
right.
jacket just does not read, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I really leaned into the first person. Also as I was like reading old pulps,
yeah,
Robert E. Howard is a lot of third person, and I mean,
right.
there's no denying that Robert E. Howard is a big influence on me. And a lot of Lula Moore's short stories are third person. But I started reading like Arthur O'Friel,
yeah, he's
and
great.
yeah, and Theodore Roscoe, and they have characters just like that where it's told like they're sitting in a bar or a coffee shop
Yeah,
in
dude.
Paris, and they're
Right.
like an old retired French foreign legionnaire, and he's recounting a story that might be stretching the truth, but there's such a, I don't know, like a there's an allure to that, like if you're sitting
That
down
sure
with
is.
a grandfathered character or
Right.
whatever. Yeah, I love that.
Guys, you can find Pathless Trail for like on PDF for free.
Yeah, it's
You
public
should read it.
domain. Yeah,
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
yeah,
definitely check that out. But that whole like oral tradition in and of itself that Louis L'Amour I think talked about, that's kind of what he wrote in. I love that. So that is definitely a filter I put in my head when I'm writing. I don't know if you guys do as well,
yeah,
but it's like could
yeah.
this be me at the campfire telling the story kind of thing.
That's 100%. I really, and I'm sure I stole that from reading Lewis L'Amour, right? I think Robert E. Howard had similar thoughts about like he wanted the Conan stories to feel like something like some old grizzled warrior told you about a
Yeah.
guy he knew, right? Um, I like to think of myself as a storyteller, and that might sound pretentious. I don't consider myself like an author because I think authors
Mm.
spend a lot of time honing grammar and craft and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I basically just sit down and try and tell a story and hope that it's, it resonates. So that's kind of where I come to when they sit down to write.
Definitely is an interesting delineation. That's why I love talking to all kinds of writers because my friend Dom, like he's in his master's program for writing and just like that. It's like
Oh,
very specifically like that's the art. Like there was such an art
right.
to the words themselves that he's super interested in. And I like nice prose for sure, but I don't.
Yeah.
That's not my focus when I'm like, writing the book. And I'm sure if I did more rewrites and stuff, I could make it like sound better. But I'm like, this, I don't. This is serviceable. I would do this. Like
Yeah.
workman
Yeah.
serviceable prose to get my story out is way more
Yeah. Yeah.
what I prefer.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I
And I
think
think that might act. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nathan. Sorry.
um the whole concept of like these stories aren't necessarily written for the pure art form as much as they're written for to entertain the readers and to pull them out of the
Yeah.
doldrums of life to something e- extremely exciting and fun, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you guys you touch. I mean, the very existence of your podcast touches on it. I think in a way, in that a lot of like pulp magazines, when they were meant to be cheap, they weren't meant for
Mm-hmm.
people. They were, I guess I should say they were meant for people that couldn't afford the finer things in life, right? They were
Yeah.
for blue collar people. Um, and they were meant to be thrown away. They're like 25 cents. If you look at some of those old scans, they're like 15 cents. Insane,
Crazy.
right? Now, I don't want anyone to just like toss my book in the trash when they're done, of course, but and I come from, I guess I wouldn't refer to myself as like blue collar because I do have like an office job, like I have some academic background and stuff like that, but I come from a blue collar family and I come from a blue collar area, and um in my experience, well, I should say in my early experience, that's where I saw people kind of dropping off reading, right? And I wanted to offer something that like my dad, my grandfather, the same people in those same kind of fields could still resonate with, despite maybe we have some, some differences in lifestyle now that we're in a modern age. But like, I think that's important. A lot of you touched on it with like Jeff when you talked about literary in adventure fiction, right? That there's a line, like obviously you can do both, right? Then that's great, and I think everyone should have access to that. But a lot of what we see on like mainstream Barnes and Noble bookshelves, right? It's kind of geared towards that more literary side, and we're losing, especially now that with the discontinuation of mass market paperback.
Yeah, devastating stuff.
We're kind of losing that. I don't want to lose that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually saw a guy I follow that I kind of know at Walmart. You know how they always have like the Westerns in like the mass market paperback size? They don't have those anymore. There's a J.A. Johnstone Western printed in that big floppy size. And I was like, this is almost like heresy.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I know.
That's where like the dreams in your head of we need to get like a Barnes and Noble equivalent that kind of looks more like a Field and Stream that you would go into. It's like men's adventure books. Why can't this
like
exist?
a Cabela's. Like it's got like the stuffed animals, some guns, some swords, and a bunch of bookshelves. Just love it. Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah,
this is the only reason we're gonna sell books is to make that a reality. Like
that's so fun. It's an investment opportunity right there.
Right?
Yeah. I for sure think that concept of like these books are as tough as you is like the pitch, right? Like read this book. It can go wherever you go. It can do whatever you do. And it's a paperback. It looks great, but it looks even better with some dirt on it, like get this thing dusty, Odyssey of Fire's right here. Same thing, dude. Put this in your back pocket, take it on a plane with you, go sit on like the beach and read it, or climb a mountain and pull that bad boy out and read it. The Cabela's bookstore though is just I don't think I can top that in my mind. It's peak stuff, dude. It's freaking fantastic.
And so much of this, like, it's just boyhood imagination for me, right?
Yeah, dude.
Like I mentioned Cussler, and like I love dinosaurs as a kid and stuff like that, and really because that was like the logs and the fire of my imagination, right? I could imagine myself as Dirk Pitt hanging from a helicopter over an abandoned cruise liner, right? That's cool, and I want to be part of that. I want to give that gift of imagination to someone, I guess, ultimately. And maybe we all do, right?
Yeah, I think that's that storyteller mentality, like you were saying. That's really what it is. And Nathaniel and I always talk about that. It's like, this is basically the most socially acceptable way for us to be playing in the backyard, like when we were kids. This is just the version that's allotted to us at this point. At this age, if I were to run around with like a fake gun, being like, "Haha," they'd be like, "Where's the psychopathic guy doing?" So I get to just write the stories and wish fulfillment that way, which is
exactly
a massive part. And it's interesting because like the writers now, I feel like a lot of us, it's like that wish fulfillment of being in our comfort of our modern lives. Back in the day, it's like a lot of these, Louis L'Amour, like they were just living so much life. So they wrote from a very different place, but we're touching on the same stuff. So it's interesting to read modern adventure and, historical past of adventure fiction and kind of just get a sense for where their minds were coming from as writers.
This is such an interesting topic because I know like Nathan has written both historical set and Nate Cold is more modern. You, Luke, as far as I'm aware, the vast majority of your stuff is set in the past, correct?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this a lot, kind of in preparation to talk to you guys. And I kind of wonder, like, in my day job, I mostly sit at a desk, right? I sit in front of a computer, and stuff like that. And there is something so refreshing about reading fiction that doesn't include cell phones, computer screens, tablets, even cars, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of those modern adventures they get wrapped up in like you said, geopolitics, technology, things like that, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's just so exhausting to read about.
Right.
Even an adventure that's supposed to be an escape, and just eliminate taking all those cards off the table. To me, feels refreshing. Like it's a new thing to me. I don't know how
Dude,
you guys feel
yeah,
about that.
that's actually, I feel like you're, like you said before, like saying what's in my mind. I feel like you clarified something that I didn't even necessarily put together myself, but the stuff that I've like, I really loved Jack Carr when I first got into him, but I have not
Yeah,
read one in a while. Just because I think it is that of like it's just kind of exhausting to be in that world right now. I don't
yeah,
want my
yeah,
escapism to be escapism. I want it to be escapism. You know, like I want to be in a different world. And I think it's just too when it's like the faction, don't they call it, where it's like so
yeah,
realistic that it can happen.
yeah,
And I don't want that right now. I would
yeah.
prefer to go to like an old, like a safari type story or something that just
Right,
is
right.
escapism.
Yeah, I think
So
that's one
yeah,
of the
thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying that,
yeah,
Ryan.
yeah,
that's one of the hardest parts about writing any modern adventure. I was just talking with a friend today of like in years past, the war in Ukraine would have happened, and some enterprising young guy would go over there to fight as a mercenary, and as soon as they turned their back on him, he would go rob the museum blind of everything in there and be filthy rich. Like you can see that playing out in kind of like a pulpy adventure story way of
yeah, yeah.
kind of like
Absolutely.
taking advantage of other people's troubles to make yourself rich. And now there's no opportunity. Not that I condone that by any stretch
Yeah,
of the imagination,
right,
but
right.
there's
Yeah,
no chance for that because the world is so condensed with technology.
yeah,
So having written like you brought up Nate Cold in the modern world, it is so hard to try and be like, all right, don't talk about a phone ever. Try not to bring up a phone. Try not to
right.
bring up anything that makes it
Yeah,
too easy.
Yeah,
I can't remember where it was I heard it, but someone was like, yeah, when you write something in the modern age, it's like, okay, well, why didn't you just use a drone to fly over and find the treasure? And it's like, dude, that's boring. Don't talk
it's
about
not
that.
fun.
yeah,
It's not
we don't
fun.
want that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's gonna take the whole point out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can try our best as modern individuals, right, to go out and find adventure. And that might look
Mm-hmm.
like a trip to another country, it might look like a hike, it might look like going hunting or fishing in a place you haven't before. But
Yeah.
seldom do people like us have the opportunity to have adventures that, were probably more, I don't know, regularly occurring in the past when there was
Right.
more wide open space, less oversight, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an allure to that, and yeah, I think that's kind of why I gravitate towards more historical settings.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I
I
love a
couldn't agree
nice
more.
historical adventure. That's why I would need to read more of the actual pulp magazines, and maybe get some this year at Pulp Fest because I want to read like the shorter fiction in that format, just more often than I have. I
Yeah,
get the short story collection, like books, short story collection. So
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I need to check
yeah.
some of that out.
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
something really interesting about reading it in magazine form because there's
Hmm.
such a variety. And they're not always going to hit right with
Hmm.
every reader. But also, again, I mentioned this with Terrence. There's like ads in them that you never see. Like,
Yeah.
that's like a kind of a historical context. And there's something that I found really interesting. Most of these magazines include poetry, and I don't always, equate men's adventure fiction with poetry or
Yeah.
poetry with something more rugged or more adventurous. But there were authors out there writing poetry,
Yeah.
not even just like cowboy poetry. There's like lumber camp poetry. There's French
That's so cool.
Legionnaire poetry and stuff like. We don't even see that
Yeah.
as like a genre of men's adventure fiction anymore. So
Yeah. That's a great point. And Dom that I mentioned earlier sent me some poetry to look at. So hopefully Veritas can
Oh, that's
put
cool.
up some of it
Yeah,
soon because Louis L'Amour, back to him, like Smoke from This Altar. Have you read that? Like his poetry collection?
I
So
have.
good. I love it.
Yes,
Love
and
that
I'm
kind
not
of
even
stuff.
like a poetry guy. I
Yeah.
mean, I admit that I'm a little scoffy at poetry for the most
But
part
yeah.
because it's not like the stuff that I want to read, right? It's
Right. Yeah.
different,
It's
and
definitely
that's
so different.
fine. It's just not for me. But like that kind of thing
Yeah.
is definitely for me, and I'd love to see more of that. Yeah,
Yeah. You
Yeah,
definitely
the
don't have to apologize of any genre, subgenre, because, dude,
yeah,
me with sci fi has always been a sore spot
yeah,
for people. I
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't like it. I'm
It's
sorry.
yeah. I'm right there with you. I get it. Yeah.
the conversation about poetry brought to mind in the Mucker by Edgar Rice
Hmm.
Burroughs. There's a character who comes
Hmm.
along who is for sure a hobo who just recites poetry in verse nonstop the whole time, and it's so cool to have that. Because I know even from reading Education of a Wandering Man, there was times where they would just sit around the
Yeah.
hobo camps and recite poems to each other, and it is a very interesting juxtaposition of like these are some tough, dangerous guys, and then they're doing something that is like
Yeah.
so counter to what you would think they'd be doing. But I think it kind of harkens back to the idea of like everybody is still in search of beauty, and so often the MacGuffins in these stories that we
Oh,
love so much are beauty incarnate, in whatever form.
Right.
So it's super cool to see, like you said, like you don't think of picking up the pulp magazine and getting to the poetry section like, oh, I can't wait to see what they put in the
yeah.
poems
Yeah.
this week. Like it is very strange to process.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you said that everyone's searching for beauty, right? I think that's very human experience. It also kind of reminds me of Lula more. Something I love about his characters in almost all of his books is that they're very well read, and oftentimes they like quote books at random.
Yeah, dude.
Like it's not at random, but like they can quote it from memory, right? Which I feel
Yeah.
like really connects back to like an ancient tradition of like oral, like Homer was originally a poem meant like the Odyssey was
Yeah.
meant for oral reciting in public.
Mhm.
Like there's I guess there's just something very human to me about telling a story, especially out loud. I think that's very interesting.
Dude, that is a massive, uh, wonderful thing that Louis does. With I'm reading Bendigo's chapter right now, and I was just on
Yeah.
the phone with Nathaniel earlier, saying about how like I love that he keeps introducing new books, speaking about the themes and how it's making Bendigo chapter think about that from reading the book and how it's connecting to his life and where he's seeing it. And so like that's a very microcosmic version where he's doing it in a very potent way. But he does
Hmm.
that in all of his books. Like he'll throw
Yeah.
those nuggets of wisdom or like throw a title out there. So if you keep a notebook around your Louis L'Amour book, or I don't know if you like write in your margins
Yeah.
of books
Yeah.
or not, you could learn. You could just keep learning from Louis outside of his books because he's pointing you in all kinds of directions, and I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and like reading has like for as long as language has been invented,
Yeah.
um, reading has been so integral to the passing of information, the passing of
Mm.
traditions, the passing of philosophy, and most of the time that's been written down like a scroll, a tablet, or a book. And now we have the internet, and like we've talked about occasionally, like on in like personal messages or whatever, we're so tied to our phones and all of that information exists on the internet, and it feels like it's easier to gravitate towards the digital way of getting this. And now like AI will spit out summaries for things, and so a lot of the time I like to try my best to shut that off because there's such a
Mhm.
tactile physical activity within turning the page of a book. There's the scent, which maybe sounds like rote and cheesy. There's the feel of the pages, especially with those used books.
Yeah,
It's an
dude.
experience that involves more senses than your fingertips on like a keyboard or a screen, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that as a human being.
Dude, I'm with you, and we have to be so intentional about that and actually pull ourselves off. Because you
Yeah.
mentioned your job, my job, same way. It's like I'm sitting in front of my computer doing a lot of notes. I'm sitting. It's very much so embedded into our modern day to have
Hmm.
the phone out on us at all times. Got to be ready to answer an email. Got to be ready to do this or that. It's like it's constantly here. So to yeah, one of the best benefits of reading is just that you get time away from your phone to do something that is an escape in a different way, and a different part of your brain is working. And I,
Yeah.
like you said, can't lose that, because your soul will feel it, and you'll be very, very
Yeah.
like depressed and kind of restless, and it won't
Yeah.
feel good to not have that being trained or used.
And your brain is very much like a muscle, right?
Yeah.
And reading is workout for that. Reading different genres, reading different topics, whatever. And I'm not intelligent enough to know the difference between reading a book and on the screen, but it seems like studies show that reading via the internet and stuff like that is not flexing those muscles as much as it would reading a book. And if you're gonna exercise your body, which you should, everyone should, you should also exercise your mind. I think that's just a part and parcel for the whole package, right?
Yeah, too well
for
said.
sure.
That's why they got to pick up a picture, or not a picture. They got to pick up the real book of your book and take it with them, and go out there and actually, read that book. You got many
Oh,
short stories to choose from. You can go out, get the adventure in, get the workout in, and get the
Oh
reading in
yeah, dude.
all in
there you go.
Sunday
Yeah,
afternoon. It's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
Speaking of Honor Among Rogues, I wanted to ask you: do you have which of these characters is your favorite to write, or are they all pretty equally split?
So, God, that's such a good question. I think my biggest personal, like the one I like the most, I think is Gold Canyon Ghosts. That
That's
was
a great
written
one.
specifically for my dad for Father's Day one year.
That's
Um,
awesome.
because he likes, he introduced me to Lewis the Moore and everything like that. And with a new kid, right? Budget's kind of tight, whatever. I didn't have it in me to like, get him a nice gift like
Yeah.
he probably deserves. So I wanted to sorry, getting a little
No, you're good.
emotional about it. But yeah, I wanted to give him something like that. So I think that's the one I'm clearly most connected
Yeah.
to. Um, yeah, I has
I
anyone
love that.
ever gotten a little emotional on your podcast before? If there has been, I haven't seen that episode.
I'm not sure. I
We
I
get
have once
emotional
or
all the
twice.
time, dude.
Yeah.
Trust me.
All right, all right,
I was gonna
rock and
say,
roll. Okay, well then I'm in good
it's
company.
it's good. I mean, it shows, like you said, you're passionate about it. This is important to you, and I think that's where the writing and why the writing shines through is because it's not coming from like, oh, I want to write and I want to be a writer. It's because
Well,
like
thank you. Yeah,
there's something so much in you, and like there's so much feeling behind it and heart behind it, and that's where the best stories come from. So
sure.
yeah, it only
What the
solidifies that you got the heart in the game. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you.
and
Thank you very much.
to connect back to like I'm sure that was such a double whammy, of you mentioning like, oh, I grew up imagining these things as a kid, and you have this relationship with your dad that fostered that, and then to finally come full circle and be like, here you go, look what I've done after all this
Yeah,
time. Like this is,
yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's super cool.
I I know we had originally set out to start talking about like short stories, and we kind of I don't know. Hopefully, this is interesting to people listening, and we kind of got off track. Um, but I think I do try and keep in mind who I'm writing for, and it's not always
Mm.
me. It's not always like the reader that picks up my book. I want to leave something
Yeah.
for my family, um, and so like I try and keep that in mind when I do it. Um,
Yeah, dude.
like I dedicated this to my grandfather who passed right before my child was born, and
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, oh, that's life, right? But he meant a lot to me, and he taught me about history. He took me hunting, took me fishing. He taught me to work on. I'm not an expert mechanic by any means, but he taught me to do basic stuff on my car and stuff like that. And like I want to keep that alive, right? It's
Right.
Yeah.
just important to me.
And it's so good that you are doing that, because dude, that's how all the old stuff that was taught to them gets lost, is if we don't
Yeah,
actually take that time and that effort. And like we were saying with the phones, it's easy to just get sucked in and lose all your pastime, lose all your chance
yeah,
to connect with
yeah,
other people, connect with your kids, connect with, your moms and dads, whoever you need to. Just like set the
yeah.
phone down and actually be intentional about that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so difficult because everything's always like grasping at our time and our attention now,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And as far like life is fleeting and we're here and I feel like well I fail at it many times because I'm not a perfect person, right? We need to try and make the most of it. Um
Yeah.
and I think again, we're off topic of short stories, but
Yeah, short
This is
stories.
what it's all.
This is the conversation. I have.
yeah,
This is what it's all about. Is I mean,
yeah,
you can't like fully articulate. Like that's why we have this podcast, is because both Luke and I have spent our entire lives loving these stories and connecting with other people through them, connecting with family through them, going on adventures with your parents, with your grandparents, whoever it is, and you go through these things, and then you're pulled into something where it's like, oh, this is the page turn version of the feelings I just felt out there in the mountains. You know, like this is the condensed down in the percolator adventure that I just had that
yeah,
has thrilled me, you know. So it's super cool to see how you as a person have come together to be the person who was able to write this fantastic short story collection, you know. And it's all because of you, you know. Like it's super
thank you.
sick.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
connections you have.
I appreciate that. I think you guys probably all feel it too. Like the writing that you do is an expression of, I don't know, your soul, your passion, your
Yeah.
life, and I think
Yeah.
I'm glad you picked up. You know, like that kind of came through the pages. Like it doesn't have to, right? But it can, and I'm glad that that resonates.
Dude, I think that is another highlight of the genre, dude, is because literary fiction, I've told this before on the podcast, but like that's where I started to read because I thought that's where like the best writing was and you had to read that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the best part about men's adventure fiction I learned was that just as much, like I got just as much merit out of it, but I also got the entertaining story. And I think what's great about the genre is, yeah, you can look deeper if you want to, and you, like, if it's a great author like Louis Moore, you can just look and look and look and keep getting as much as you
Yeah,
would in literary fiction. But you don't have to if you don't want to, and you're not interested in that. Doesn't matter. Like you're getting the
yeah,
same
yeah,
great, awesome, entertaining story. So I love the duality, like just how much it can be for so many different people who want so many different things. It's a great
yeah,
genre that I hope more people check out if they never have too. You know, obviously
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
be watching this, but for the people who haven't, like,
Yeah.
I hope they pick it up one day because there's a lot to be had.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's fantastic. Um, so you got other stuff in the pipeline, right?
I do, I do.
Cool thing you did here
So this
with
is a big goal for me. Yeah.
you got the selection here where it says more forthcoming stuff. That's pretty cool. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
Sick.
I liked that.
So so that was entirely inspired by Night Over the Solomons because Louis L'Amour has that big page in the very front that lists all the
Yeah,
stuff you can
dude,
buy
yeah.
and read from him, right? And I clearly don't have that. And I wanted to build to that, right? And also it keeps me accountable. That I put it in print, and so I need to follow through on that. So there are two things in this one that I have dedicated my next two writing endeavors to. And they will exist because I said it and I like to try and keep my word, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm really going through it. So Savage is the next one to come out. It will be novella length. It's not a short story, but it'll be about 150-ish pages, give or
Very
take.
cool.
It's very much inspired by H. Rider Haggard, Talbot Mundy, Rudyard Kipling, especially The Man Who Would Be King,
Sweet.
which is like one of my favorite movies ever. Sean Connery and now I can't even think of his name.
So
Michael
Michael
Caine.
that one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Michael
that's-
Caine.
yeah.
I was going to say Austin Powers' dad.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
Great call.
And I love that setting. It is first person. It's also going to it says my name as author on the cover, but when you open it, it will say I'm the editor because the entire thing is presented as a found document by an
Ooh,
archaeologist in
dude, I love that.
1923, and it's the hero's dying. Like he knows he's dying, so he's recounting his like mission from Her Majesty's Secret Service into uncharted Tibet. And there's a lot of there's
Fantastic.
some weirdness in there. So this is my ultimate standard for if I'm going to put something out. If I love it, that's all that matters. I talked to Honor Among Rogues got a 2-star review the other day. Not a big deal. They didn't leave a review. It was just a rating. Whatever. Things don't hit for everybody, and that's fine. it's more important to me as a writer when the feedback comes from people who get it, right? I'm writing for a specific audience, and if they don't get it, that's fine. It doesn't bother me. But the people that do get it, I hope that they are like, oh my god, I love this. This is where have this been all my life? That's kind of what I'm going for. So yeah,
fantastic.
hopefully I'll have that out summer in a couple months here. I think
Very
I'll finish
cool.
it in time. So yeah,
That's
rock
awesome,
and roll.
man. Yeah, that's fantastic news. Well, it's super exciting. I love seeing. If you guys haven't, we'll link it below to sign up for the Cliffhanger magazine. Get an email every so often about that, and it always brightens my day. Great name, by the way.
I'm glad.
Where
Thank
did
you.
that name come from?
So I can't take complete onus of it. I have a friend, like an online friend. His name's Zach Reynolds, and we kind of had this idea for a long time, and we could never quite get it off the ground. We wanted to do print, but like money's tight, whatever. It takes a lot to get print out if you're going to try and do like a legitimate magazine. And we just weren't ready for it, and so I ended up just doing it online. The cliffhanger is like my favorite thing, and I like to end chapters on cliffhangers.
Yeah, man.
Because it keeps you reading. The idea is I want you to keep reading. And like, yeah, online is not my favorite format. I wish it was in print. But I do try and get authors that get it, right? I've got some coming up. I've got a lot of pirate stories, which I think is interesting because Jeff said in that episode that there was not a lot of pirate fiction. So there are some pirate fiction out there on Cliffhanger magazine. So you could go check that out. It is free. I don't charge. I will accept tips. There are tips on the bottom. It all goes to paying the authors. It doesn't go to me directly. So,
very cool.
Yeah, it's out there. Cliffhangermagazine.com.
Get the fix of the pirates for sure, because that is a problem I've had too. Is like anytime I have a pirate story, I'm looking around, I'm just getting Captain Blood.
Yeah.
The only one given to me, and I'm like, thank you. Treasure Island, Captain Blood. Treasure Island, Captain Blood. Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm excited. You go scratch the pirate itch. I know where to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super exciting. Well, we really appreciate having you on. I'm sure we could just talk for hours.
Yeah.
You're an Eagle Scout as well, right? So
I am. Yeah, I am very vocal and proud of being an Eagle Scout. Yeah.
Also, archaeological background, bro. You could just. I mean, you could probably teach classes on fiction and real life uses of it and how you've probably learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But your Cliffhanger magazine has an Instagram and it's fantastic. I always love the pulp covers you do with the little quips and the lines, dude. It's so funny. it's very, very well done. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's a blast.
Yeah, this is such a great pleasure.
Definitely check this out.
Thank you so much,
man. Thank you so much for coming on, giving us your time, and having us a really great conversation. Like I said at the beginning, this is what it was all about. I knew it was going to be great, and it was lived up to the hype, too. This was a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Well, we'll link everything for how to have people follow you and stick around with you below.
Sure. Awesome.
Curse of the Bone God is up on Pulp, Pipe, and Poetry. So if you read this and you haven't been convinced by how articulate and well-spoken this guy is about the genre, go read Curse of the Bone God and you'll be buying the collection immediately. So check it out. It's fantastic work. But yeah, other than that,
awesome.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you next one.